Welcome back to Starting Point. We're now joined by California Democratic Congressman Adam Schiff. He is the ranking Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee. He is among the lawmakers who have been briefed on the Boston investigation, including a briefing last night. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Let me start off with this news that we did hear overnight, that the FBI, not only the FBI was informed by the Russians about Tamerlan Tsarnaev in 2011, but later in the year, the CIA was also informed by the Russians. The Russian intelligence service reaching out to the CIA to have the CIA look into the brother. Both the FBI and CIA independently looked into this brother and found no reason to continue their investigations, but it doesn't appear that either spoke to each other. What are you hearing about that?
Well, it seems like it was really two identical or nearly identical inquiries, merely sent to two different agencies. The FBI responded. They went out. They interviewed him. They did a background of all the online traffic to try to find out, was there any information indicating that he had been radicalized, as the Russian inquiry suggested. And basically, they weren't able to find anything. And they did a pretty thorough look based on this single tip. And John, you got to keep in mind, they probably get 10 to 20,000 tips or inquiries like this every year. So considering the volume and considering that they really didn't have much to work with, they did a pretty thorough job. They went back to the Russians and said, we haven't been able to find anything. What have you got? Can you give us more to go on? And the Russians didn't respond. And I think they went back to the Russians multiple times and were responded to with nothing but silence.
And then, though, we learned that the Russians went to the CIA with a similar request, and the CIA found the same thing. I guess what I'm saying here is at some point, should there have been some communication between the FBI and the CIA on this, or is this another example of what they call stovepiping when the intelligence agencies?
I don't think there's any indication that there was a stovepiping problem here. This information was put in a database. It was shared among different agencies. It was shared with a joint terrorism task force. And that's exactly what should happen. So I don't think this was a situation where either agency was withholding something from the other. The reality is that the agency that went out and did the investigation wasn't able to find anything. So I'm not sure what more could have been done, particularly in light of the fact that we just don't have the capacity to surveil everyone that we get a tip on. And also it's regrettably the fact that some of the foreign intelligence agencies will share misinformation if they want to somehow impugn someone that they consider a dissident or undesirable. So we have to look out for these false positives as well.
So you're suggesting that maybe you have to be careful with some of the information that the Russian government was providing?
We do. Now, there's no indication that that was the case with the Tamerlan brothers, but we do have to take with a certain grain of salt some of the inquiries that we get. And again, it's a question of capacity. There are a lot of people, suspects, that are much higher on the suspicion list than these brothers were, and that's where a lot of the resources get devoted. But I haven't seen any indication yet that this was a failure to share information, with the left hand not knowing what the right hand is doing. Obviously, the investigation is still at a very early stage, and we're going to withhold any conclusions. But some are racing to say that the FBI dropped the ball or the agencies weren't talking to each other, and that just doesn't seem to be the case.